once you start to understand how fortunate you are and all the bumpers that you benefited from, a common response is gratitude and to want to be a bumper for somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're called to be, being intentional about noticing the blessings in our lives, and then the only proper healthy response, in my view, is gratitude. And part of the ways you show gratitude is to pay it forward.
When life throws a challenge at you, one thing is certain: to find a resolution for every issue, every problem, for everybody, there's more than one way. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of More Than One Way. We are excited today to have Jerry Askew with us. We get to interact with Jerry quite a bit, and it's always a joy to get to do that.
Thank you.
But one thing about Jerry that you may not realize is Jerry recently went viral on Instagram with a clip from a recent sermon that he gave at St. John's. And it was really interesting to watch how many people, how many non-followers and others really gravitated toward the message that Jerry shared about an image that he had and kind of how that helped him kind of understand his life. So we wanted to bring Jerry in and talk more about that because we think it's something that you can really relate to, and obviously it's something that's touched a lot of people. So we're excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Do you mind if it's not a problem? Can you tell the image again?
Sure.
And the whole setup.
Sure. Shortly after I joined St. John's, I was asked to be the person who made the big ask on Boy Scout Sunday. We used to sponsor an inner city scout troop, and one Sunday a year we'd have Scout Sunday, and all the kids in the troop would come in their uniforms, and we'd ask all the Eagle Scouts in the nave to stand up at one point during the service. And that was always interesting because you had 18-year-olds and 80-plus-year-olds standing up all around the congregation, and it was very nice. But one person was chosen every year to make the big ask for financial support for the troop. I had been active in scouting, and so one of the things we do at St. John's pretty well, I think, is try to get people integrated really quickly. And so if we have newcomers, we'll ask them to read lessons and carols, or we'll try to find a way to integrate them as quickly as we can. And I had not been here very long, and so they asked me to do the ask. Okay. So I prepared, had my note cards, already. I knew I was ready to give all the statistics on why Boy Scouts were good, and when it came my time to make the ask, I walked up. I stood in the center of the chancel, facing out, looking out at all the people, and I had a vision. And as I joked, I had some visions in college, but that was probably a different kind of thing. And I looked out, and the vision that I had was that the center aisle of the church was a bowling alley. And honestly, I didn't know exactly what to do with that. And I stood there at what seemed like 30 minutes to me, but was probably a second or two. And then it came to me, what I needed to say. And I put my cards in my pocket. And I looked out and I said, "How many of you have been bowling?" And everybody raised their hand. And I said, "How many of you have been kiddie bowling?" And most people raised their hand. And I said, "What's the difference between kiddie bowling and adult bowling?" And somebody yelled out, "The bumpers." I said, "Exactly. See, we're all bowling balls. Our mamas pop us right down the lane of life, but nobody gets popped straight down. Everybody veers to the left or veers to the right. And the only difference between the children that make it all the way to the pins and the ones who end up in the gutters are the bumpers." And today we have a chance to create bumpers. We raised a bunch of money that day. And that was so in the sermon I related that story because for me, the key to that story for me was that I went home that day and I started reflecting on the bumpers in my life. I'd had a very rough childhood. It included a lot of violence at home, a sexual abuse against me. my brother died when I was 7 and he was 5, and I participated in his death by throwing his shoe across the road, and he went to get it. When he came back, he was hit by a truck. At one point when my mom and dad split, she took my younger siblings with her and left me with Dad. There was just this, what we now call adverse childhood experiences, and I had a lot of those, and I had really up to that point described myself as a victim. My life, in my mind, the story I told me was consisted of bad people doing bad things to me. And as I reflected after the service, after the sermon, for that afternoon and then for weeks and weeks and weeks afterwards, I realized how many bumpers I'd had. And I was able psychologically to start the process, a process which continues to integrate those hurts, those disappointments, those traumas into a bigger picture of my life as one of grace. Finding that equilibrium between recognizing, acknowledging the graces in my life, the bumpers in my life, if you will, and the traumas. It certainly isn't about erasing the trauma. I mean, it's a real thing. Those are all real things that happened to me. But to be able to see them in a much healthier context has been something that has helped me enormously to find some peace.
Sure. Can you give me give us an example of like one of the bumpers, somebody to?
Well, I was thinking, I was thinking about it, and I came up with 3 that I can describe pretty quickly. When I was a boy, I wanted to be in Boy Scouts, and the word on the street was that our local Boy Scout troop was oversubscribed, and they had a waiting list. And so just on a lark, one day I went into the scout hut in our town, and I walked up to the scoutmaster, and he said, "Son, how can I help you?" And I, very close to tearfully, my voice was shaking. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so nervous, and I said, "I know you have a waiting list to get in the troop, but I really want to be a Boy Scout, and I wondered if I could get you to put me on the waiting list so when a slot opens, you'll take me." And he just looked at me, and he put his arms around me, and he just said, "Son, I will never turn away a boy who really wants to be a scout." And so for me, that was the first time that I can remember that somebody just accepted me.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, how old were you?
I think it's 11, maybe, something like that. I can't remember when we start Boy Scouts. But
me either.
Yeah. So that was it was unconditional positive regard. And second one, a little different kind of bumper. I had. I'm not sure why, but for some reason I had started skipping football practice in 7th grade. We had 7th and 8th grade team, then we had JV, and then we had varsity. 7th and 8th grade team. I was in the 7th grade, and I had skipped some practices. And the coach, finally, one day when I showed up, he came in and said, "You've been skipping practice. You're no longer on the team." And I was devastated. I mean, it was like, in my hometown, football was king, and if you were on the football team, you were a big nobody. And so I didn't have any choice. I took off my equipment, I put it in the cubby, and left. About 2 weeks later, he saw me in the hall, and he called and said, "You think you might like to be manager of the team?" Which was not really what I had in mind, but it was a chance to be back involved with the team. And I said, "What does the manager do?" He said, "Well, you have to wash socks, and you have to,
by hand.
You have to, yeah, exactly,
on a washboard.
I have to go up into the mountains, and but no, and sweep up just clean up after every practice and after every game, and so I said, "Sure." And I did that for about 2 weeks, and then he came in and said, "You'd like to be on the team again?" and so, this is where I veered off center, and would have probably, knowing me at the time and knowing what the environment I was in, it would have been, if I didn't have football, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble and probably would have. But he found a way to bring me back in a way that, and I talked to him 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So,
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting because there's two totally different
Right.
bumper styles in a sense.
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, very much
You know,
so.
one
Yeah.
complete just acceptance, what you might call grace,
Right.
unmerited,
Yeah.
you know, that whole world. And the other one is, well, all right, you're gonna have to participate in this a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to help you out. And how do you think they could? How do you think they could see what you needed? Let's put it that way.
Wow.
That's why I call it grace.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one had been a long-time scoutmaster. He had seen a whole lot. It turns out that he knew my dad, and he knew the problems that were likely to be happening in our home. The second one, he's just a great coach, and he saw something in me that was worth saving.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
but he brought in accountability, and that was hard, important, but difficult. I had to swallow a lot of pride to be the manager.
But you think of, I mean, he took that time and attention
Oh,
for
absolutely.
a seventh grader who
Oh,
was
yeah.
skipping. I mean,
Yeah.
he obviously had other things
Sure.
to do and other players that he was
Sure.
concerned with, but he took that investment, which is pretty amazing.
Well, and the third one's even a different kind of bumper. My best friends growing up were two guys that had moved to town in the 10th grade, and we became really good friends. They were very, very wealthy, and I was the opposite of wealthy. And so their dad kind of took me under his wing. He was gruff as he could be. He wasn't any kind of touchy-feely kind of guy, but and I didn't really realize what he was doing until later. But he knew that I didn't have the money to be able to do the things that his son and his stepson were going to be able to do. And then they went off to private school in Virginia, and he kept. I had become like another son, and so when my life at home was falling apart, I had another home to go to. And JJ, my friend's father, he just put me to work. First thing he did, which I thought was great, he said, "You need to understand that rich folks aren't any different from poor folks." And so he started inviting me to bartend at his parties at his home.
Oh my gosh.
And he had the first 2 nickels he'd ever gotten. He'd still squeeze them every once in a while to see if he could get any oil out of them. But I remember one day he saw me pouring bourbon into a glass and then dropping the ice cubes in it. He said, "Boy, haven't I taught you anything?" He said, "Put the ice cubes in there first. And then when you pour that bourbon over top of it, it looks like they're getting a lot more than they are." But then he'd say, "Those boys want to come home from private school. I need you to drive up there and get them." And so I'd drive up there to get them and bring them back. And every time I did anything, one time it was like, "I need all the beds in my new nursing home put together." And every time he would do that, he would pay me. And he paid me pretty good money. It was his way of protecting my pride. Nobody wants to take a handout, but also to give me some pocket money so I could take my girlfriend out on a date, or I could do. So, I mean, and he knew what was going on at my house. He absolutely knew, because they were like surrogate parents to me.
Yeah. And how old were you then?
I was too young to be bartending. I think 16, because I had
that was back in the day when 16 was a drinking age. in North Carolina, anyway. Yeah.
Of course, we still had near beer.
Yeah. So yeah, it's almost as if, once again, part of being a bumper is knowing who you're with, what they might need, and a lot of that can be based on where you are in your life. What's going on in your life and what's happening with you.
Sure. And I think being intentional about it. I think once you start to understand how fortunate you are and all the bumpers that you've benefited from, a common response is gratitude and to want to be a bumper for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're called to be toward God, is identify, being intentional about noticing the blessings in our lives. And then the only proper healthy response, in my view, is gratitude. And part of the ways you show gratitude is to pay it forward. One of my other important bumpers was my college fraternity advisor, and he was an amazing man. But he was one of those advisors that it didn't matter if it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the morning. If you needed him, he was there. He was my hero and the person I wanted to grow up to be like. What I haven't told you is that when I met him as a freshman, he was legally blind. By the time I was a sophomore, he was totally blind. By the time I was a junior, he had lost all feeling below his knees. And by the time I was a senior, he weighed less than 100 pounds. But he was a diabetic. And back then we didn't know much about diabetes and how to address it. And but he was still always there. And no matter what I needed, he was a phone call away. And so on the day he died, he called me at my office in Memphis. I would have been 23 or 24. And he called me, and I hadn't talked to him in a few months. And I said, well, to what do I owe the honor of this call, Doc? And he said, I'm going to die today. Whoa, and I just wanted to call and tell you I love you and to say goodbye. And I was always kind of the class clown, and he had rough times while we knew each other, and I was always the guy who could get him to laugh or tell him a terrible joke or whatever and lighten it up and kind of pull him out of his funk. And I tried every trick in the book, and finally he wasn't taking the bait. And I said, you just need to let me get in the car right now. I won't even pack. I'm getting in the car right now. I'm going to drive to you. I will be there in 15 hours. We'll get through this together. And he, no, Jerry, you don't need to do any of that. And I started fussing at him. I said, after all we've been through, you're not going to give me 15 freaking hours to get there so we can talk our way through it. And I was screaming at this guy who's on his deathbed, and he finally said, Jerry, I didn't call to fight with you. I called to say goodbye and tell you I love you. And he handed the phone to his mother. And his mother's sitting there by his deathbed. And I started screaming at her, I can't believe you're just going to let him give up. I can be there in 15 hours. And then I finally blurted out what was on my heart. And I said, don't you understand, Ms. Harris, if he dies today, I'm never going to be able to pay him back. Mm-hmm. And she said something that was about 1978, I guess, something that changed my life. She said, don't you understand, Jerry, if he lived to be 100, you couldn't pay him back because you can't pay back. You can only pay forward. You can only do for some other young boy what he did for you. And he died, I think he was 38.
Oh, my gosh.
So
you were that close in age. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, wow. We were very tight. But that's what I say. If we can get people somehow to focus on their blessings, it doesn't negate any of the horrible things that have happened to them. But it's about the balance and trying to see them in context.
How do you think we help people do that?
Well, I hope we do it. Certainly from the pulpit, we do it by trying to preach hope. By trying to give people reasons to see their life differently within the context of grace. In our community here at St. John's, I think we do a wonderful job of sharing ourselves with each other. Thom has a Bible study on Sunday mornings, and we have people who really tell a lot about their lives. Some people are more open than others, but we know a lot about the people's families and tough stuff's going on in the families, and people who are going through divorces and just being there. I think that helps, and that builds community. The byproduct of that kind of care and listening is community. And we are wired to be in community. I mean, when I was coming up, they used to teach evolution as, the biggest, strongest, meanest, fastest wins. And it turns out evolutionary biologists know now that that's not the case. The ones that won in natural selection were the ones that learned to cooperate with each other. Mm-hmm. So a furry little creature can't take down a mastodon, but 1,000 of them can.
Yeah.
And so that's how evolution works. We are wired to be in community with others for our survival, but also for the other intrinsic needs that we have.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm picking up from, or at least I'm getting from what you're saying is, and part of being in community is recognizing the gift you have to offer that community, and then using it within the context of, in a sense, how do I help this person?
Yeah.
Or am I the one who's going to help this
That's
person?
a great point.
Am I the person, or maybe somebody else needs to be the person because their gifts are different than mine? Because as you were talking, I kept trying to think, well, who are those people for me? Or, who are the and every time I thought of somebody, by and large, usually can't think of too many until really my young adulthood. It was someone who I worked with or met with individually. I never had it in a large scale, or it's like, for instance, I was thinking of like when I was in seminary. And when I was in seminary, I found seminary very difficult because it wasn't what I expected, which happens when you have expectations, right? It's like it's supposed to be this way and it's this way, right? And I couldn't adjust. And I was having a hard time adjusting until they started bringing in spiritual advisors. And I could have a person that I could go and sit with week after week after week and talk through the difficulties I was having and how come and what was going on. And once I could do that, then I could go and do the thing. And what I found is that's true completely in my life right now.
Yeah, I think it's almost as if community is the context in which all of those linkages take place. My experience was the same. You notice each one of those was an individual person who invested in me in very different ways. But I think that being a bumper is, I don't have any research to back it up, but my sense is being a bumper is more about one-on-one. But that if enough people are doing it, then the context becomes a very loving community.
Yeah, no doubt. Right. And it just, once again, it's just making me think of, part of a bumper would be recognizing the gift I have to offer to whoever it is.
I think that's right. So you have to be kind to yourself too.
Yeah, no doubt. The whole love your neighbor as yourself.
I think it's also recognizing the value in every person too.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
that piece with the idea that everybody deserves that kind of attention, and maybe we're not the person that gives it to every person. But in those moments that we have that opportunity,
What might be the exact person.
Yeah.
Well, I can think of
whichever one.
I can think of a situation like that. I was struggling with some stuff when my kids were in elementary school, and I felt like I needed to be doing something different, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And the custodian at Sequoia Elementary came up to me and says, "Hey, brother, you look like you got something on your heart." And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, this parenting thing's about to kill me. I don't think I'm doing a very good job." And he said, "You know what we call that in my church? We call that getting your heart convicted. God's speaking to you, and you need to listen. And God will tell you what to do." And this great statement of faith from this guy who probably, I'm sure he didn't have a high school diploma. And he was there. He was like an angel there. He was, and it was okay. It's okay, but you're not by yourself. You don't have to make all these decisions on your own. And pray about it. Your kids need you to pray for them. And it was like, wow.
And what happened?
Well, I like the same thing that happens to all of us. If we're parents, we pray, we do the best we can. But I think the most important thing, he didn't give me any advice. except to pray. But the most important message I got was, you're not in this by yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's what most of the time we get so isolated, because we think we're the only ones who have this problem. And
Nobody will understand.
Nobody will understand. And plus, there's a certain pride, I think, that I certainly have had to deal with in my life. Too proud to ask for help.
Yeah, it's really hard to do.
Too proud,
goodness.
and and for me, I have to say a big part of my difficulty was because of all the stuff that happened to me with the kid. The one thing I knew was I had to keep all that secret. If I was going to have any chance at all to win a scholarship to Chapel Hill or anywhere else, I had to pretend like I was perfect.
Wow.
And so I was the student body president, and I was the captain of the football and basketball and baseball teams, and I dated the head cheerleader. And I mean, it was just, you had to excel.
You had the resume. You had
to have the resume, so people wouldn't know that your dad was a violent alcoholic, and and all the stuff that, and it's all a lie. I mean, I was telling myself a lie that I had to be perfect all the time in order for them not to know. And everybody in town knew. A. And B, nobody expects you to be perfect. But that was my strategy. I remember in the 10th grade telling my mom, I will find a way to win that scholarship.
Wow.
And so when my dad kicked me out of the family when I was 16, I couldn't let anybody know that.
Well, I mean, part of that perfect thing, once again, would be, the image of a bowling ball is that it's kind of just goes on its own, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about us is we might jump over the bumper, or pretend to the bumper, I don't really need you. I mean, right? That whole thing. And I come across the perfection thing consistently. Yeah. That people, for whatever reason, especially religious people, good people.
Yeah.
Who think goodness isn't enough.
Yeah.
That they've got to be perfect. And so therefore they're going to pretend like, well, I don't need bumpers.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm on top of the world. Doesn't everybody know that? And
can't you look at me and tell?
Yeah.
I'm only having 4 drinks a night.
That's right. Well, I mean, but the whole idea that if I fake it well enough, it's true. Yeah.
Right.
And that, once again, is it just makes me really, really sad, because of this whole idea of we're in this together. Yeah. And if we can believe that,
yes,
right? Maybe we'll turn to a bumper and say, "Hey, man, you're the one. I need your help."
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of why the spiritual life is so important, because if you can, using whatever methodology that you find useful, if you can develop an awareness of the transcendent. I mean, some people call it God. Some people call it, I mean, whatever word. One of my spiritual advisors calls it the more. But if you can have that relationship with something that is transcendent, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And
you have your own experience that this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then once again, and where the bumper community part comes in is, and then you might even have people that you can talk to about it.
Sure.
You might even have people who, when it's confusing and you're struggling, because in my experience, if you're on the spiritual journey, then your image of God and how you understand God is going to continuously change and shift and grow as you change and shift and grow. And it's really nice to have people to admit that to.
Sure.
Yeah, because that can be scary.
Right.
Yeah. It's scary.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if you come from a spiritual tradition where people in the pulpit tell you the truth.
All right.
The absolute truth, the black and white truth.
Yeah, and if your idea of faith is rock solid belief that never shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that somehow or another that for many people becomes faith. And then once again, why would you need help?
Sure.
I got faith.
It's interesting. This is a story that you know, Thom, but a therapist friend of mine took me through a guided meditation, and she asked me to go to the safest place that I've ever been. And the place that I went to was the crepe myrtle tree in my granddaddy's front yard. It was the perfect bowl, and some days it was a fort. Some days it was a rocket ship. Some days I was in jail. Some days, I mean, it was like anything. That crepe myrtle, perfectly shaped bowl crepe myrtle, was a happy place, and it was a great part of my childhood. And then she said, "Okay, and she said, I want you to feel the air, feel the temperature, what color's the sky." She really got me deep into it. And then she said, "Now I want you to imagine that somebody's standing behind you. And what does it feel like to have somebody standing behind you?" And then we went through that for a while. And then she said, "Turn around and see who it is." And I turned around, and it was a guy who was probably 35, 40 years old, a little taller than me, a little heavier set. And he said, "Hi, Jerry." And it was my brother, Gordon. It was my brother who had died when he was 5. And I just looked at him and I said, "I'm just so sorry." And he said, "About what?" And I said, "About throwing your shoe across the road." And he said, "Oh, that? Haven't given it a second thought." I said, "Yeah, but if it hadn't been for me, you could." He said, "I'm great." He said, "I am having the time of my life." He said, and he said, "So you don't need to worry about that. And, I've been with you the whole time, and I am so proud of the life you've lived." And, I mean, it was killing me. And we talked for a while, and then he said, "I'm always here. You can come back to the crepe myrtle anytime." And I talk to my brother almost every day now.
Wow.
And
so the bumpers can come from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was more evidence in my experience of something transcendent.
Yeah.
And
that whole world that is just so mysterious and so difficult to talk about. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Well, and consciousness, the big debate is consciousness local? Does it come from the brain, or does consciousness come from external? And I'm sorry, but all of my evidence is pretty clear that there's something out there that transcends me.
I'm on that side, too. I vote for consciousness as a field of energy that we are involved in. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So here we are in this, and I have this goofy question to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Why do you think so many people got into the clip?
I'm astonished, honestly, because when I came back from the beach and y'all said you went viral, I said I wasn't quite sure what that meant. I had all my shots, but I just think that it was a very accessible story that led people to examine their own lives. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of a little push. Think about it a little different way. Mm-hmm. And all I can say beyond that, it was a God thing. I mean, obviously having a vision wasn't something that I expected to happen, and I obviously didn't expect to say anything like that. Well, but then when I told that, so it fit in whatever sermon I was preaching that day, but it fit, and I just think people could identify with it.
Well, and I think it's wonderful that you gave it time, that you didn't just be like, "What was that about?" Why don't I think about a bowling alley and get back to your notes? You know, I mean, look at the impact that it had then and continues to have.
And again, I think that was a God thing too. I mean, it's not my modus operandi. Most of the time, when I'm prepared to give a speech or when I'm prepared to say something, I say exactly what I'm prepared to do, no matter whether the audience is asleep or whatever.
No, I hear you. And so the nudge that you are given the people who are so connected to this, and tell me if I'm on the same page with you. The nudge is, don't over-identify with the bad things that have happened with you, but then also don't deny that there's something that's real. Somehow or another, see yourself beyond those experiences or those feelings or those emotions or
and the actual happenings. I mean, the words I used that day were that my reflection gave me a chance to start integrating those things that really happened into a larger story.
All right, gotcha. Mm-hmm.
It didn't. None of my having making an inventory of my bumpers in no way changed any of the crappy things that had happened. But I got a chance to see them in perspective, and it's really about wholeness.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for being happy, but I'd much rather have peace. Mm-hmm. And I think so much of peace comes from being whole, being in balance. And a big part of that is acknowledging yourself and not having unrealistic expectations of yourself and loving yourself. Because, I mean, after all, God created the world and looked at it and said it was good. Now, I mean, we all know that's an allegory, but yeah, that includes me.
Yeah.
And you did. I remember a lot of your sermons, but you preached a sermon on we're fearfully and wonderfully made. And
I made that up too.
Oh yeah. I happen to know.
I know. There's a book. I'm just kidding.
That Bible thing keeps coming in. But no, but that was a really important sermon for me to hear. That am I really? Maybe I am. You know.
Yeah. Maybe sometimes we feel that way, and that's one of the reasons why we don't reach out for help when we need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just, in a sense, don't feel like we deserve it.
Oh, I think that's true. I can tell you, the tradition I grew up in made absolutely sure that I knew all of my sins. And I still have trouble singing How Great Thou Art because it's a wonderful song, but they always played it as a way of Jesus and God are wonderful and you're not. A wretched piece of whatever. And so I...
how do you integrate that in to where you are now?
Well, what I'm trying to do now, this is I've tried a lot of different things over the years to try to integrate. It goes back to my brother's death. My mama was a hardcore church lady. I mean, when the door was open, she was there, and most of the time she unlocked it. And so we got drug around back and forth to the church lots and lots. But when my brother died, my mother had her faith. And I remember lying in bed beside her, and I was crying, and she wasn't crying at all. And I said... And, you know, the relatives were sitting around, all her sisters, and it's kind of classic old Southern situation, and maybe not just Southern. Maybe it's all over the world. But the ladies were in the bedroom, and Mama was in the bed, and I climbed up in the bed with her. And she said, "Son, it's okay. God has a plan. And if he had been sitting in the rocking chair in the living room, he would have died at that moment because that's all part of God's plan. And I don't understand it, but one day I will." And I thought that was ridiculous. It was like, how am I supposed to worship a God who's got a plan to kill my brother? Yeah. But for her, it was exactly what she needed. Yeah. My dad, on the other hand, didn't have that. And he was already an alcoholic, but he just climbed deeper into the bottle and became more and more violent. And he was angry. His child had died. And I remember I was really hard on him for a long, long time until... almost to the day that my son was the age of my brother when he got killed. And I'd be a basket case if that happened. Yeah. And it was doubly bad on him because when they went out, he's a traveling salesman. When they went out and found him, they told him it was me. And so he's got that 2-hour trip back home, and he trying to get his head around having lost his oldest son. And when he came in the driveway, again, I remember like it was yesterday, I ran out of the front door and jumped up in his arms, and he realized it wasn't me, then it must have been Gordon. So there, he went through the death of 2 children in 2 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a little more sympathy for him.
Yeah.
It didn't take away any of the horrible things he did, but I had to give him a little grace because I don't know what I would have done in that situation.
Yeah. So empathy is a big part of the whole deal as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, man, we could go on talking about this forever. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for your openness and honesty, and just thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It's
Thanks, Jerry.
always good to be with y'all.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the More Than One Way podcast, brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Practice in Knoxville, Tennessee. We really appreciate your time and would love to hear your feedback. You can reach us by emailing hello@morethanonewaypod.com, or you can connect with us on social media using the handle @morethanonewaypod. If you found this episode helpful, we hope that you'll share it with your friends, with your family, with people you work with all the people who you know. Thank you, and take care.